Hi, I'm Lena Corbin. It happened 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't found the words for the exact kind of silence that followed. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that settles like fog after a storm. No, this was the kind that wraps around your ribs and tightens with every breath. It started when my brother, Julian, turned to me in the middle of one of his live stream setups and snapped, "You always ruin everything." Just like that. No warning, no build-up. His ring light had flickered, his mic had cut out for a split second, and somehow that was my fault. I didn't even respond right away. I just stood there in the kitchen doorway, holding a chipped mug of tea I'd reheated twice. I blinked, stunned. Not because of what he said, but because of what came next. My mom, Monica, nodded. Actually nodded. Like he'd finally said the thing they'd all been thinking for years. And my dad? Greg didn't say a word. He just rubbed the bridge of his nose like the entire situation bored him. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just inconvenient, I was officially unwanted. And what's worse, no one had the decency to lie about it anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even defend myself. Because how do you argue with people who've already decided your presence is a problem? I walked to the guest room, the one they'd let me use while I was between jobs, as if every bill in that house hadn't once had my name on it. The door still stuck when you tried to close it. The carpet smelled like old air freshener and dust. I moved like a machine, stuffing a few basics into a bag I hadn't touched since college. Sweatshirt, jeans, laptop. I didn't pack anything sentimental. No photos, no cards, no letters. I'd stopped writing those years ago, the day I realized no one was reading them. I left the Mother's Day envelope on the nightstand. The one they never opened. The one I'd spent my last $30 on, trying to stitch something broken with monogrammed silk and a note that said, "If there's still a place for me in your heart, I'd love to sit there again." Apparently, there wasn't. 15 minutes later, I was gone. No one asked where I was going. No one followed. No one even texted. The street outside was quiet. Too quiet for how loud my pulse had gotten. I walked down to the gas station a couple blocks away, bought a granola bar and a bottle of water out of habit, not hunger. The cashier didn't look up when I asked about the bus. "Last one's in 8 minutes, he muttered. It showed up 17 minutes later. I waited anyway, sitting on the cold bench with my coat zipped to the top and my backpack clutched like it was the last piece of proof that I existed. When the bus pulled up, I climbed on and didn't look back. I didn't need to. I already knew what I'd see: nothing. Downtown Charlotte passed by like smudged color outside the window. I kept my head down. No one made eye contact, and for the first time that day, it actually felt like relief. At the end of the line, I got off and walked 3 blocks to a beige motel with a flickering red neon sign and a front desk clerk who barely looked up from his television. I handed him $42 in cash, everything I had left. He gave me a key with a room number scrawled in Sharpie. When I opened the door, it smelled like bleach, cigarettes, and old secrets. But the lock worked, and the bed didn't collapse under me, so it was good enough. I didn't cry. Not even then. I sat on the edge of the mattress, still wearing my jeans, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling until it started to look like a broken heart or a burned-out star, depending on how you tilted your head. My phone was face down on the nightstand. No missed calls. No messages. Nothing. I finally reached for it when it buzzed once. Just once. I held my breath, hoping. But it wasn't them. It was a notification. Reminder gift from Lena, delivered May 2023. That's when I remembered. The box I'd sent Monica. Hand-wrapped, ribbon-tied, with a handwritten note tucked inside. It had been delivered. Just never opened. And somehow that hurt worse than anything else. Not the words they said, not even the way they looked past me like I wasn't there. What really broke me was that they'd thrown me away so quietly I almost didn't notice. I hadn't been kicked out, I had been erased. I didn't plan to rebuild my life from a motel room with flickering lights and a mini fridge that buzzed louder than my phone ever did. But that's where it started. In the quiet. I woke up before sunrise the next morning, not because I had somewhere to be because I didn't, but because my body couldn't sleep any longer under the weight of that kind of silence. I sat on the edge of the mattress for a long time, staring at the thin stream of light coming through the heavy curtains. I counted the money I had left, $270 and some change. That was it. No job, no home, no family support. Just a bag of clothes, a secondhand laptop, and a heart that felt like it had been packed away in a box no one cared to open. But something shifted that morning. I didn't feel brave or strong, just clear. Crystal clear. If no one was coming to save me, then maybe I needed to stop waiting and start moving. I walked 3 blocks to a small cafe near the bus depot. There was a chalkboard sign outside that read, "Free Wi-Fi. Coffee refills all day." That was all I needed. Inside, the air smelled like burnt toast and floor cleaner. I ordered the smallest coffee they had, $1.75, and chose the table closest to an outlet. I pulled out my laptop and opened the bookmarks tab. Years ago, back when I still believed in backup plans and rainy day folders, I had saved a list of tutoring platforms. I never used them, not seriously. I thought I was too busy, too important, too settled. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I logged in. One of the platforms still had my old profile. I updated it. SAT prep, ACT strategies, essay review, patient, experienced, reliable. Under About Me, I typed, "I believe in showing up even when no one else does." That line stayed with me. By noon, I had applied to 16 tutoring listings, parents desperate for help with test scores, students overwhelmed by college pressure, kids who sounded a lot like I used to be. Halfway through the 5th application, I paused. The words, "reliable, compassionate listener," stared back at me. I thought of my grandmother then. She used to say I was the quiet one, the one who listened when no one else did. At Sunday dinners, when everyone else talked over each other, I'd sit at her feet, just listening. She always noticed. She once told me, "People will miss the loud ones first, but it's the quiet ones who leave the deepest holes." I didn't fully understand that until I was the one gone, and no hole showed up at all. At her funeral, I found out there had been a second letter. A family friend leaned in during the reception and whispered, "I hope her second letter brought you peace." I blinked, confused. I only ever got one. "Oh," the woman said. I must have been mistaken. She wasn't. When I asked my mom about it 3 days later, still giving her the benefit of the doubt, she didn't even flinch. "It wasn't anything important," she said, "just sweet old lady things." I swallowed that answer like vinegar. That's how it had always been, quiet erasures, not violent, not obvious. Just slow, methodical removals of me from the picture. My name missing from captions. My ideas repeated without credit. My seat at the table slowly pushed further and further from the center, until one day, I realized I wasn't even sitting anymore. I was standing in the doorway, holding a chipped mug, waiting for someone to remember I was there. But the students remembered. That surprised me the most. I didn't expect them to see me. Not fully, but they did. One girl named Riley, a junior trying to improve her reading score, told me during our second session, "You're the only person who's explained this in a way that makes sense." She smiled at me like I mattered. And for a moment I felt it too. Like maybe I did. I started booking sessions regularly. The public library 2 blocks from the cafe let guests borrow Chromebooks, so I'd reserve a 2-hour slot every afternoon. I sat at the same desk near the window, logged in with my borrowed laptop, and taught like my rent depended on it, because it did. The pay wasn't glamorous. $25 here, $45 there, but it was mine. And every dollar felt earned, not given out of obligation, not dangled like a leash. Mine. Every evening, I'd go back to the motel, sit on the edge of that creaky bed, and write my earnings on the back of the motel receipt. Tutoring hours. PayPal payments. Next week's goal. I wasn't building an empire. I was surviving, but with purpose. And somehow, in the middle of that grind, I started to feel something new. The beginnings of pride. Not ego. Not performance. Just a quiet recognition that I was showing up for myself, something my family had never learned to do for me. I stopped checking my phone for missed calls. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally knew what to expect. Nothing. Then one night, I was scrolling through Julian's Instagram out of morbid curiosity, don't ask me why, and saw a post that made my breath catch. "Family is who shows up when it matters," the caption read. He was flanked by Monica and Greg, all smiling like a toothpaste commercial. My eyes drifted past the glasses of champagne to the wall behind them. That photo. The one framed next to the fireplace. It used to be the family portrait we took when I was 16. I knew it by heart. But now, it was gone. Replaced. A new photo in its place, Julian in the center, Monica in a cream cardigan, Greg stiff but smiling. Even their golden retriever, Sprout, sat in front, tongue out. It looked like a stock image titled, "Perfect Family." Only I wasn't in it. I zoomed in to be sure. But I didn't need to. I knew. I was erased. Not forgotten, not missed. Removed. With intention. Like I never mattered. Like I never lived there. Like I had never held that house together when the mortgage almost fell behind. Like I hadn't driven Julian to his first college tour when Mom had a migraine. I sat there with my phone glowing in the dark, my heart thudding in my chest, but not from sadness. It was something else now, an ache mixed with anger. Not loud, not violent, just full, heavy. Like watching someone toss away a letter without reading it and realizing it was yours. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I started organizing. My files. My proof. My memory. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted something they never gave me. Record. I began collecting everything: time-stamped curriculum drafts, tutoring outlines, receipts, emails. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't living in the margins. I was writing myself back in. It started with a spam folder. Of all places. I was sitting at the cafe, working through a list of student inquiries, sorting replies, feeling almost human again. Business was slow but steady. I had 3 regular clients, 2 high school juniors and a GED student in her 30s, and I was finally starting to believe I might make it through the month without dipping into emergency cash. I was searching for a tutoring request someone said they'd sent but never heard back about, so I checked my spam tab out of habit. And there it was. Subject line: Family podcast opportunity. CC'd for transparency. At first I thought it was a mistake. I don't get CC'd on anything anymore, especially not things involving my family. But when I opened the message, my heart dropped into my stomach. It was a pitch email. From Julian. To a PR firm. He was proposing a podcast episode on modern family dynamics, digital resilience, and healing. His words, not mine. Near the bottom, a single line cut deeper than anything I'd read in years. My sister. She's emotionally unstable. We don't speak, and there are reasons for that. I'd prefer she not be included in any capacity. My breath caught. I reread that sentence 3 times, each time feeling my throat tighten like it was being pulled shut from the inside. Not only had he erased me from our family photos, he'd now gone public, attaching labels to my name in spaces where I wasn't even present to defend myself. I didn't scream. I didn't text him. I didn't call anyone. I took a screenshot. Then I printed the email out the next morning at the library and taped it to the motel wall, right next to my grandmother's letter, the one they told me wasn't anything important. The contrast was stark. One line was written in love, the other in calculated cruelty. But that wasn't the worst part. A week later, Mari, my old roommate from college and one of the last people I still trusted, showed up unannounced. Her face was pale, her voice shaky. "I was dropping off social media campaign materials at Julian's," she said, and while Monica had me waiting in the kitchen, I saw something. She pulled out a few printed pages from her tote and slid them across the table. My stomach turned before I even read the first sentence. It was my writing. Word for word. The intro from the tutoring guide I'd written back in 2021. The same formatting. Same phrasing. Even the diagnostic rubric I'd spent 6 months refining. All of it. Under Julian's name. Rebranded. Polished. Packaged. Stolen. I didn't speak. I didn't move. My fingers just tightened around the pages. He said you gave it to him. Mari added quickly, already knowing that was a lie. But I knew your voice the second I saw it. The betrayal hid in layers, shock first, then anger, then something deeper and colder, humiliation. All this time I thought I'd been forgotten, but no, I'd been looted, used. My silence hadn't just been convenient, it had been profitable. Later that night, after Mari left, I sat on the floor of my tiny motel room, my back against the wood-paneled wall, surrounded by printouts, curriculum drafts, emails, that will from my grandmother, her name in blue ink, her signature under the clause. All intellectual property created with or by Lena Corbin shall remain under her sole name. I had scanned it years ago and uploaded it to a forgotten cloud folder. I opened it now and stared at the sentence like it was a lighthouse cutting through the fog. I hadn't just created that work. I had inherited it. It wasn't just mine emotionally. It was mine legally. The next morning, I made an appointment with a local intellectual property attorney named Margot. She was in her 50s, sharp, efficient, and didn't once ask me why my address was a motel. She read the documents I brought, my drafts, the will, the email thread, and tapped her pen against the paper. "You don't need a lawsuit to protect yourself," she said plainly. "You just need to make it known. Formally, publicly." I walked out of her office with paperwork in hand, the sun warming my back, and something I hadn't felt in months: control. But peace never lasts long when people are used to you being powerless. That night there was a knock on the motel door, 3 sharp raps. I checked the peephole and almost laughed. It was Greg, Monica, and Julian standing like a curated crisis response team. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. We stood in that narrow hallway like strangers. Monica spoke first. Her lipstick was smudged. Her voice wavered. "We made mistakes," she said. "But family means forgiving." I looked at her, then at Julian, then back at the woman who used to braid my hair and now refused to acknowledge her own handwritten name on a letter she never opened. "No," I said calmly. "Family meant not burning my letters. It meant calling me by name in your posts. It meant not selling my work and then calling me bitter when I asked for recognition." Julian wouldn't meet my eyes. I stepped back. "I'm not fixing your mess," I said, and closed the door, not with a slam, just a solid final click. The next day, a thick envelope arrived via certified mail. Inside, a proposed settlement agreement. Legalese in bold print. A 6-figure check. A clause that read, "In exchange for the withdrawal of all claims and permanent deletion of public statements." Translation: "Shut up, take the money, and disappear for real this time." I held the check for a long time. My hands didn't shake. Not out of cold. Just clarity. Then I walked to the library, found the nearest shredder, and fed the entire offer into the blades. Silence used to feel like survival. Now it felt like surrender. That afternoon I recorded a video. Just me. No filters. No background music. I read my grandmother's will aloud. I showed the drafts, the timestamps, the plagiarized versions side by side. I didn't accuse anyone by name. I didn't need to. The facts did that for me. When I finished, I looked into the camera and said, "They say silence is strength, but sometimes truth needs a voice. This is mine." Then I uploaded it and closed the laptop. Within hours, the story caught fire. Parents of students I'd tutored commented. Former teachers shared it. A blogger stitched it on TikTok and said it was the clearest case of professional erasure she'd ever seen. Julian went silent. Monica posted a vague message about family trials and miscommunication. But the internet wasn't buying it. Not this time. And me? I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I sat quietly in my small room, tea cooling in my hand, and watched the numbers tick up. Not for validation, but for visibility. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. I didn't expect peace to last. I knew the moment my video went live. The one where I spoke plainly, showed my grandmother's will, laid out the receipts like puzzle pieces that couldn't be misread. I knew it would rattle something. And it did. Not immediately. At first, there was this eerie stillness, like the eye of a storm. Support poured in from old students, educators, even complete strangers who said things like, "This helped me say no for the first time in years." Or, "Thank you for reminding me that silence isn't noble when it protects harm." I printed a message from a single mom in Houston who said, "Your course saved my daughter's confidence." I pinned it to the wall beside my grandmother's faded letter and the printout of Julian's email calling me unstable. Side by side, they painted a complete picture of what had been taken from me and what I'd reclaimed. For a few days, I walked around feeling, not triumphant, but steady. And that in itself felt revolutionary. Then the first red banner hit my inbox. "Your website has been temporarily suspended due to a copyright violation." I blinked. For a second, I thought it was a phishing scam, some automated fluke. But when I clicked through and saw the sender domain, my stomach dropped. It was legitimate. They had filed a takedown request, not a counterclaim. A full, formal complaint alleging I was using proprietary material without permission. The irony would have been hilarious if it hadn't been so precise. They were trying to erase me again. This time, not emotionally, not through family dinners I wasn't invited to or photos I'd been cropped out of. This time, they came with paperwork and silence legal tools designed to cut deep and leave no fingerprints. I called Margot immediately. My lawyer. My lifeline. "It's traced back to Julian's branding agency," she said, no hesitation. "They're trying to bury you under bureaucracy." I sat at my second-hand desk, staring at the notification, a strange calm overtaking me. This wasn't panic. This was insult. This was the part where they tried to punish me for not staying silent. Again. Only now I had something they didn't expect. Documentation. Years of it. Drafts. Timestamps. Cloud backups. Even voice memos from when I used to talk through lesson structures out loud, hoping someday someone would care. So I got to work. I opened a new folder on my desktop and started dragging in everything, every diagram, every outline, every email chain dating back to when I first built the framework Julian had stolen. I highlighted the clause from my grandmother's will and saved a clean PDF. I took screenshots of every version of my curriculum before it was stripped of my name. I even found old Canva templates I'd created that had later appeared barely edited on his now suspended website. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I documented. Because that's what I've always done. When they pretended I wasn't in the room, I remembered who said what. When they tossed my efforts aside, I archived. I kept everything. Like I knew someday, I might need to prove I had ever existed. The hardest part wasn't collecting the proof, it was reading it. Reliving the erasure. The way I'd once asked Monica if we could do a joint tutoring program and she said, "You're better one-on-one, dear. Julian connects better with people." The way my course materials were renamed Success Academy and marketed as Julian's passion project born from personal struggle, even though I was the one who stayed up until 2 a.m. editing PDFs and emailing slides. I went through it all again, line by line. And then I wrote the counterclaim not with rage but with restraint. I kept the tone measured, legal, precise. And in the final line I added, "Please find attached all original documentation verifying authorship and IP ownership, filed in accordance with state and federal intellectual property law." Then I sent it. But they weren't done. That night, someone forwarded me a Reddit thread. It had already gained traction. The title made my throat tighten. "She stole our family's brand and now she's crying victim." The username was generic, but the language was unmistakable. It was Julian, or someone hired to sound like him. The comments were ruthless. "Typical jealous sibling. Bitter much? Can't believe someone would destroy their own family for attention." I didn't respond. I didn't post a rebuttal. I just read, quietly, until I reached one near the bottom. "Funny how the receipts always show up when the loud ones overplay their hand." I stared at that sentence like it was a rope tossed down into a deep, dark well. And I climbed. The next morning, I recorded again. Not a statement. A demonstration. I kept the room dim. No makeup. No edits. I held the will in my hand and read it aloud. Then I screen shared every document. Every folder. Every timestamp. I spoke calmly. Steadily. My voice didn't shake. Even when I read the line from Julian's agency email, where my name had been replaced with internal consultant, I ended with this. They thought silence would protect them. That I'd choose peace over truth. But truth is peace. And now it has my name on it. I uploaded the video and walked away. The internet responded like wildfire. By the end of the day, the original Reddit thread had been locked for misrepresentation. Screenshots from former interns were surfacing, emails, chat logs, even shared Google Docs with my initials in the file names. Parents reposted testimonials. Students I hadn't heard from in years sent messages like, "I knew it was your work. I never forgot the way you taught me to believe in myself." I didn't answer most of them. I didn't need to. I was being seen, finally, in ways that weren't performative. They weren't clapping for a tragedy. They were witnessing a correction. But the final blow came hours later, a second red banner in my inbox. This time not a threat, an injunction, filed by Julian's agency, an attempt to block my site permanently. Defamation, they said. Unauthorized use of educational materials. I should have panicked. A year ago I might have. But now? I read the document slowly, then printed it and pinned it next to the others. Then I made peppermint tea and sat on the edge of my bed, letting the heat warm my hands. This wasn't personal anymore, it was public. They weren't just trying to erase me, they were trying to erase my students, my impact, my work. They had underestimated the one thing they never bothered to value: my memory, my evidence, my name. And they weren't getting it back. The knock came late. One of those knocks that sounds like it already knows the answer but is showing up anyway just in case you've softened. I'd just poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, trying to quiet my mind after the injunction news, when I heard it. 3 firm raps, spaced perfectly. I stood without rushing, looked through the peephole, and there they were. All 3 of them. Monica, Greg, and Julian. My entire erasure committee, standing in a line like they were rehearsing an apology they didn't believe in. I opened the door but didn't say a word. I didn't invite them in either. We stood there, hallway stale and dimly lit, and for a second, it was like time had folded back on itself. Only this time, I wasn't holding tea in a chipped mug, waiting for them to see me. Monica spoke first. Her lipstick was faded, her hands visibly trembling. "Lena," she began, voice low. "We made mistakes. We know that now. But family means forgiving." I didn't blink. I just watched her carefully, as if her mouth might finally say something she hadn't rehearsed. But it didn't. Her words were polished, vague, and missing something important. Accountability. I turned to Julian. His face was pale. His usual arrogance had collapsed into something smaller, something like panic wrapped in shame. Greg said nothing. As always, just stood there like a pillar that never leaned in any direction. "No," I said quietly, but clearly. Family meant not burning my letters. It meant reading the note I tucked inside your gift. It meant including me in the family posts, the dinners, the photo on the wall. You don't get to redefine family after you've removed me from it. They didn't argue. Monica looked down. Julian shifted his weight like a child caught in a lie. I stepped back, and for the first time in years I didn't yell, I didn't slam the door. I closed it. Slowly, deliberately. Click. The next day, a package arrived. Small box. Certified mail. Signature required. Inside was a cream envelope stamped with the branding agency's logo. Legal language. Formal tone. At the top, proposed settlement agreement. My eyes scanned the first line. In exchange for non-disparagement, full intellectual property rights and name restoration will be returned to Lena Corbin. A check was included. High 5 figures. Maybe low 6. The message was clear. Shut up, walk away, and let us move on without public embarrassment. Bury your voice. Again. But they misunderstood something crucial. Silence wasn't safety anymore. It was currency. And I wasn't trading with it. I read the NDA once, then again. Not as the woman who used to ask for a seat at the table, but as the woman who built her own table from scraps they left behind. Then I fed it line by line into the shredder in Margot's office. The machine hummed quietly, turning polished silence into strips of waste. I didn't film it. I didn't post it. Some moments don't need witnesses. Some power is better felt than seen. That afternoon I wrote my final statement. Not a video, no dramatic lighting, just a still image. My name, my credentials, and one sentence typed beneath it. You don't owe people silence just because they share your last name. I added a second line before hitting publish. I won't take hush money for pain I never caused. It spread like fire, not because it was scandalous, but because it was honest, raw, undeniable. Women messaged me. Educators, estranged daughters, forgotten sisters, people who had no platform but knew the story intimately. One woman wrote, I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. The next few days were blurry in the way only clarity can be. My inbox filled with press inquiries I ignored. My video was stitched by teachers, bloggers, even a lawyer from Chicago who used it in a lecture on intellectual property theft. Julian's site went dark, quietly. No explanation. No farewell post. Just gone. Word circulated that Monica had sold the house. Some said it was to cover legal costs. Others said she just wanted to disappear. I didn't dig into the rumors. I didn't call anyone to confirm. Because none of it mattered anymore. Closure, I realized, isn't always a door slamming shut. Sometimes it's just walking so far away you forget what the door even looked like. Instead, I focused on the thing I'd never been allowed to keep. My voice. I built a new website. Not flashy, just clean, honest, functional. I named it after my grandmother. The domain included a small subpage. The Quiet Scholarship Fund. No lofty promises. Just a modest effort to help one student a month with tutoring access. I started with Riley, the junior who told me I made things finally make sense. I emailed her mom a scholarship offer for 4 free months. She called me in tears. That call did more for me than any of the apologies that never came. And then came the letter. It arrived in a blue envelope, handwritten, addressed only to Miss Lena. Inside was a thank you card from a former GED student I'd worked with briefly, when I was still sneaking sessions in at the public library. She wrote, You were the first person who told me I wasn't dumb. I believed you. And now I'm starting nursing school this fall. I sat on my apartment floor with that card in my lap for over an hour, not crying, just breathing, letting it land in a place that hadn't been touched in years, because it didn't hurt. Not this time. And that was the difference. I hadn't just survived. I'd moved on without needing them to watch. A few nights later, I printed a copy of my grandmother's letter again, folded it the way she used to fold her notes to me. No return address. No message. Just the words she wrote at the bottom. You will build what no one sees today. I mailed it to a girl I once tutored, the one who told me her parents said she felt too much. And dreamed too loud. Maybe she'll read it in a moment when the silence starts to crush her. Maybe she won't. But I sent it anyway, because I knew what it meant to feel erased. And I also knew now that there was a way back through the rubble, under your own name. As for my family, I haven't heard from them since. Not on my birthday. Not when the podcast deal fell apart. Not even when someone anonymously leaked the full trail of evidence that got Julian removed from a local education panel. There were no, "We're proud of you," messages, no quiet admissions. But I didn't need them. I wasn't fighting for that anymore. I wasn't chasing a resolution that depended on someone else's capacity for decency. I was done asking to be seen. I made peace with the truth. They weren't villains. Just people who found it easier to use me than to face their own reflection. They didn't erase me to be cruel. They did it because I made them uncomfortable. Because I was a mirror. And now, all these years later, I finally set it down. Not shattered. Just no longer mine to hold. You know what surprised me the most? Not the legal victory, not the attention, not even the messages from strangers thanking me for saying what they couldn't. It was the quiet that followed. Not the hollow kind I had known in that motel room a few months earlier. The kind that presses into your skin and makes you question if you're still real. No. This was a different quiet. Stillness. Breathable. Like the world had finally stopped screaming over me long enough for me to hear myself think again. And I didn't just hear myself, I believed myself. I wasn't exaggerating. I wasn't too sensitive. I had been erased. And now, I had proof. But I also had something more valuable than proof. I had peace. That peace didn't show up like fireworks or a dramatic movie ending. It came in moments, in tiny rituals. In the first morning, I didn't check my inbox for threats or takedowns. In the slow afternoons when I brewed coffee without rushing to be somewhere else. In walking into my new apartment and locking the door behind me, not because I was hiding from anyone, but because I knew, finally, no one had the right to walk in and take anything from me again. That little place was nothing special. Second floor, creaky hardwood floors, a window facing a city bus stop, but it was mine, fully mine. No staged family portraits, no unspoken tension. No ghost of a girl always waiting for someone to say her name with love. I hung my grandmother's letter on the wall above my desk. The original was too fragile now, so I framed a copy, the ink fading just enough to look like it had lived. Below it, I pinned the email from Julian's agency, the one where they called me unstable, and claimed I had nothing to do with the content I had built from scratch. And next to that, the thank you card from my GED student, the one who said I helped her believe she wasn't dumb. I called it my wall of contradiction. On one side, erasure. On the other, evidence. Somewhere in the middle, the truth I chose to live by. I didn't hear from my family again. Not after the video. Not after the settlement offer I shredded. Not after their podcast deal was publicly dropped and their social media following quietly dwindled. At some point, Monica sold the house. I heard through a friend of a friend. They said she wanted a fresh start. I didn't blame her. The house was full of memories none of us wanted to face. Or maybe just ones they didn't want me in. Julian went quiet online. His website stayed down. His academy disappeared like it had never existed. I used to wonder if he'd ever try to reach out, not to apologize, but to explain. He didn't. And that was its own kind of answer. But I didn't need an apology to heal. Healing didn't come from them finally seeing my worth. It came from no longer needing their validation to feel whole. That was the difference. I stopped asking, why didn't they fight for me? And started asking, why did I keep waiting for them to? I stopped making excuses for their silence and started honoring the noise inside me that had always begged to be heard. And once I started listening to that voice, the rest became easier. Not easy, but clearer. I built a schedule. Simple. Steady. Morning sessions with students. Afternoons at the library, prepping new lesson plans. Evening walks just because I could. I taught under my name now. No filters. No disguises. Every course was branded with the truth. Built by Lena Corbin. And slowly, that name, my name, started to mean something again. Not just to me, but to the people I helped. A kid in Utah emailed me after his SAT score jumped 210 points. A working mom in Pennsylvania said my GED prep course helped her finally qualify for nursing school. I kept every message. Not out of pride, but because they reminded me that my voice mattered. And it always had. They were receipts of the version of myself that my family couldn't see but strangers did. And sometimes, that's enough. I never went viral again. No big headlines. No talk show invites. And I was okay with that. Quiet success suited me better. It felt real. Earned. Grounded. I didn't need everyone to hear me anymore. I just needed the right people to listen. And they were, one by one. Student by student, person by person. I started something small, a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. Nothing fancy, just a monthly grant to help one student cover tutoring, testing fees, or books. I funded it myself at first, setting aside a portion from each paycheck. When I shared it with my mailing list, a few past clients chipped in. One even offered to sponsor a month anonymously. It wasn't a movement, it wasn't a revolution, but it was mine, rooted in the belief that education, when protected from ego and exploitation, could still be sacred. I named it the Quiet Light Fund, because sometimes the people who shine the brightest are the ones no one thought to look at. Then one rainy morning I got a letter. No return address. Just my name in soft, rounded handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a folded note from a girl I'd worked with briefly during the peak of the chaos. She'd been 16, scared, and quietly brilliant. Her letter read, "You told me it was okay to be big inside, even if the world was small outside. I didn't believe you then, but I do now." I placed her letter on the wall under my grandmother's. A reminder that not all legacies come with headlines. Some come in envelopes. Quiet, but irreversible. I won't pretend I never feel the sting. Grief doesn't follow logic. Sometimes it creeps in during the most peaceful moments, like when I'm sipping tea and think, would Monica have liked this flavor? Or when I see a mother and daughter laughing in the park and have to look away. The ache is still there, but it doesn't control me. It doesn't drive me. It just exists. Like an old scar you stop noticing until someone asks you where it came from. I don't hide it, but I don't lead with it either. And maybe that's what peace really is. Not the absence of pain, but the absence of permission for that pain to keep driving your choices. A few weeks ago, I printed a second copy of my grandmother's note. Folded it neatly. No return address. Just the message, "You will build what no one sees today." I mailed it to a student I had only worked with once, just long enough to see the sadness behind their silence. I don't know if they'll read it. I don't know if it'll mean anything, but I sent it anyway. Because I've learned that sometimes healing is a relay. Someone handed hope to me when I thought I was too erased to matter. Now I hand it forward. I don't live for revenge. I live for restoration. For quiet, protected, unshakable restoration. And this silence, the one I live in now? It's not hollow. It's mine. I used to think legacy was something you had to be given, passed down through bloodlines, or bestowed by people in power. For a long time I waited for someone in my family to name me worthy. To hand me something, respect, recognition, even just a seat at the table, but they never did. And maybe that was the gift I didn't know I needed. Because eventually, I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping they'd see me, and started building the version of myself I knew existed, even if they couldn't or wouldn't admit it. What I have now wasn't handed to me. It was reclaimed. Quietly. Deliberately. And that, I've come to believe, is the most powerful kind of legacy, the one you build out of your own ashes. These days, when I wake up, I don't reach for my phone to check who's watching. I don't scroll through old family photos trying to spot myself in the corners. I stretch. I breathe. I open the window, even when it's cold, just to remind myself that the world is still turning, and so am I. My life isn't glamorous. I don't live in a high-rise or run $1 million company. But I get emails almost daily from students who say things like, "I finally understand math because of you," or, "You're the first adult who didn't make me feel stupid." And that's more meaningful than any family title I was denied. The tutoring platform I rebuilt under my own name continues to grow, not because I marketed it aggressively, but because word of mouth spread. Quiet, consistent, honest teaching, that's my brand now. I take on 5 students at a time. Max. I give them more than test prep. I give them space to be human, to make mistakes, to ask questions no one else gave them time to ask. I've stopped measuring success in likes or shares or approval. I measure it in sighs of relief, in the way a struggling teen lights up when they solve a problem without prompting. In the silence that follows when a student whispers, "I didn't think I could do this," and then does it anyway. I also started mentoring a handful of new tutors, young women mostly, fresh out of college, already doubting if they're enough. I see pieces of my younger self in them, the version who always over-prepared, who never spoke first, who said sorry before giving a correct answer. I remind them that showing up fully, without apology, is its own kind of lesson. One of them told me recently, "You make it okay to take up space." I smiled when she said it. Not because it flattered me, but because I finally believed it was true. I've become someone my younger self would have clung to. Someone she would have whispered to during dinner when no one else was listening. Someone she would have trusted with the letter she never got to send. That realization comes with weight, but not the kind that drags you down. It anchors me, keeps me from floating back into old habits, seeking validation from people who only knew how to withhold it. One afternoon, while organizing files, I found a photo from college, me, Mari, and two other friends laughing outside the library. I was holding a clipboard, mid-sentence, clearly explaining something, my mouth open, hands gesturing. I stared at it for a long time. I remembered how that moment felt. How I'd never imagined that version of me, earnest, wordy, kind of awkward, would become the foundation for a life that no one in my family saw coming. I slipped the photo into a frame and placed it on my desk, just below my grandmother's letter. Legacy isn't in the flash, it's in the thread that connects your past self to your present one. That thread for me is made of every moment I kept showing up even when no one noticed. The Quiet Light Fund grew slowly. A few past students asked if they could contribute. A former colleague matched my donation one month. Then a stranger, someone I didn't even know, sent me $200 with the note, "For the girl who still believes in the ones no one else sees." We've helped 12 students so far. Not hundreds. Just 12. But each one feels like a spark I get to pass forward. A kind of living defiance against the belief that value is measured in volume. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that family portrait. The new one. The one they posted after I left the one with Julian in the middle, and me cropped out like I'd never been there at all. I used to wonder if they replaced it to punish me or to forget me. I don't wonder anymore. I've come to understand that people remove what unsettles them. My presence unsettled them because I was the mirror. I reflected things they didn't want to see, truths too sharp, too honest. And so they erased me. Not because I failed them, but because I reminded them of how they had failed themselves. I don't hate them. I don't even resent them the way I used to. I just no longer hold space for them in my story. Not because they don't matter, but because they stopped showing up when it counted. And my story, my real one, is built on people who did. Students who trusted me. Mentors who nudged me forward. Friends who found forgotten letters and didn't look the other way. Even strangers who offered encouragement when I had nothing but receipts and resolve. That's my tribe now. I've stopped calling what they did to me betrayal. That word suggests they ever had my back in the first place. The truth is simpler. They never saw me. Not fully. Not honestly. And now, I don't need them to. Visibility, I've learned, isn't just about being seen. It's about refusing to go invisible again. It's in continuing to build, speak, teach, even when the people who doubted you are watching from a distance, unsure how you rose without their permission. Last month, I was invited to speak at a small education conference, nothing fancy, just a panel on equitable teaching practices. I almost declined. I didn't think I had anything special to say. But then I remembered that girl, the one in the college photo, mid-sentence, still unsure if her words would land. I said yes. I stood in front of a modest crowd and talked about building classrooms where no one gets erased. About the importance of documentation, not for lawsuits but for legacy. I told them how I used to believe silence was strength, and how I now believe the opposite, that giving voice to your truth, especially when no one asked for it, is the loudest kind of courage. Afterward, a teacher in her 60s came up to me with tears in her eyes. "I wish I'd heard this 20 years ago," she whispered. I nodded, not to comfort her but to affirm both of us. Me too. So yes, this is my legacy. Not wrapped in applause, not etched into the family tree, but written in every lesson plan, every scholarship check, every quiet reminder I send out into the world that says, you still matter. Even if no one's clapping, even if they told you otherwise, especially then. And for every person who's ever been erased, cropped out, talked over, minimized, I say this. You don't need their permission to start. You only need your own name, your own voice, your own truth. They didn't see me coming, but I came anyway. And I stayed. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that the apology I kept waiting for was never going to come, not because it wasn't deserved, but because the people who owed it never believed they'd done anything wrong. And when you live your life waiting for someone else to make things right, you put your healing on layaway, hoping someday they'll get around to paying the balance. But that someday never arrived for me. And oddly enough, I'm glad, because the peace I found didn't come from being seen by them. It came from finally seeing myself clearly, fully, without apology. These days, I move slower. Not because I'm tired, but because I no longer rush toward approval. I've traded urgency for intention. I no longer need to prove that I deserve to stay in the family photo. I've built something better than proof. I've built a life. It's not loud, it's not shiny, but it's mine. And more than that, it's honest. My days are filled with small wins that don't get posted online. A student finally mastering subject-verb agreement. A parent emailing me to say their kid no longer cries before tutoring. A handwritten thank you note slipped into my mailbox with no return address, just a quote I once said in a lesson: "You can take up space quietly, it still counts." These moments aren't viral, but they matter. They're bricks in the foundation of something steady and lasting. Something the people who tried to erase me will never understand because they were too busy curating perfection to ever sit with truth. I still get messages now and then. Women from all over. Some whispering through their keyboards, others shouting in relief. I thought it was just me. I didn't know other families treated silence like currency. Thank you for reminding me I don't have to shrink. Those words, raw and unpolished, land deeper than any apology ever could. They tell me that the story I was once ashamed to own is now helping someone else hold their head a little higher. That matters more than any reconciliation. It's not about revenge. It's not even about justice anymore. It's about resonance. Legacy. I don't check for updates on my family. I don't search their names. I don't scroll through Julian's curated highlight reel or wonder how Monica is explaining the fallout to her friends. I've stopped hoping they've changed. That's no longer my job to track. My responsibility is here in the classroom, in the inboxes, in the moments I show up for someone who's just starting to believe they're worth showing up for. That's where I live now. But every so often, I think about the girl I used to be. The one standing in the hallway with a chipped mug and no one saying her name. The one packing her bag in silence while the family she supported pretended she didn't exist. If I could sit beside her now, I wouldn't tell her it gets easier right away. I wouldn't sugarcoat it. I'd tell her the truth. They will try to break you with silence, but you'll learn how to speak anyway. And when you do, your voice won't just save you, it'll become something others hold on to in the dark. And that's what I carry forward. I carry it for the students who've been labeled too slow or too much. I carry it for the women who were told their emotions made them unreliable. For the daughters who were given responsibilities but never credit. For the quiet ones who never got invited to the table and decided to build their own instead. I carry it for every version of myself who thought disappearing was easier than being misunderstood. You can survive being erased. But more than that, you can rewrite the entire page. So yes, I send messages forward. In scholarships. In lesson plans. In quiet acts of defiance dressed as everyday kindness. I sign my name fully now. Lena Corbin. No shrinking, no parentheses, just me. Because they didn't just underestimate who I was. They miscalculated what I'd become. And now I'm the one writing the narrative. One truth at a time. If there's anything I've learned through all of this, it's that you don't need anyone's permission to heal. Not your parents. Not your siblings. Not the world's. For a long time, I thought I had to earn peace. Prove I deserved kindness, inclusion, acknowledgement. But peace isn't something you wait to be handed. It's something you choose to create, even if it starts alone in a quiet room with nothing but your name and your truth. I was erased from the very spaces I helped hold together. But what they removed didn't disappear, it rebuilt. Slowly, deliberately, and with more honesty than they ever knew how to offer. If you've ever been told you're too much, or too quiet, or too inconvenient to belong, hear me now. You are still whole. You don't have to shout to be heard, and you don't have to disappear to keep the peace. You can live fully, without shrinking. You can build legacy out of silence. I did. And I promise there's a version of your life that doesn't depend on being accepted by the people who overlooked you. You don't need to go back and fix what broke you. You just need to keep building forward. That's where your power lives.